Yeah, so actually it does go deep in so that our continued discussion with that is happening. Yep, and it has, and I think so just in case there are questions, Teresa can get it and stuff.
I think so. They mix this up.
That's why I was like,
Good.
yeah, and I have some of that.
I ate them.
Find them someday, but I look, I start turning around, I start, oh really? Your whole kitchen already? I'm like,
Oh, really?
right, no, they did. It's taking care of things, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, right. Well, yeah, so, and I think that's a mistake. Well, seeing as how it's 6 o'clock and I think we're missing a couple folks, but at least one of them is not going to be joining us this evening. So I would like to call to order the 18th regular meeting of the Board of Directors of SAD 52. And if Yuri could lead us in the pledge. Thank you. Our first order of business will be to act on the minutes of the 17th regular meeting, April 1st. Any errors or omissions noted in those? Seeing none, accept those under general consent. Communications, Kim.
Thank you. I would like to report the resignation of Susan Pilot, Tripp Middle School Assistant Principal, effective June 30 of this school year.
That brings us to item 4, budget work session. Item 4.1 is to act on the proposed creation of positions. And we should have necessary verbiage in our packets. Yuri.
I'd make the motion to approve the following new positions embedded in the board adopted final proposed fiscal year 22 budget. A half-time pre-K Ed Tech 2 at Turner Primary School, and a half-time pre-K classroom teacher also at Turner Primary School.
We have a second from Richard. Discussion on this? And just a reminder, this is a procedural step that needs to happen. These positions were embedded in the budget that was adopted. This is simply another step that, in order to be in compliance with all of the processes we need to undertake. All those in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous? Item 4.2, we need to call the district budget meeting. Yuri,
I would move that the warrant for the district budget meeting presented to the meeting be approved and that a district budget meeting be called for May the 6th, 2021 for the purpose of voting on the annual budget for the district for the 21-22 fiscal year.
do we have a second?
Yes.
Richard? Any discussion on this? Again, procedural steps to keep us in compliance with this whole process. All those in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous. Brings us to 4.3, and 4.3 is call of district budget validation referendum. Yuri,
I move that the warrant and notice of election for the district budget validation referendum presented to the meeting be approved, and that a district budget validation referendum be called for May the 20th, 2021 for the purpose of approving the budget adopted at the district budget meeting for the 21-22 fiscal year.
do we have a second?
Yes.
Richard? Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Brings us to 4.4, and 4.4 is authorization for secretary of the district to complete the form of notice of amount adopted at budget meeting. Yuri,
I move that the form of notice of amounts adopted at budget meeting presented to this meeting be approved, and that the secretary of the district be authorized and directed to complete said notice by adding the amounts approved by the voters for each expenditure category and the total school budget summary expenditure amount, all in accordance with the district budget meeting on May the 6th, 2021, and to deliver attested copies of said notice as completed to the clerks of each municipality in the district for posting at all polling places for the May the 20th, 2021 district budget validation referendum.
Seconded.
second from Richard. Any discussion on this? All those in favor? Unanimous. That brings us to signatures of required budget documents. Michelle, do you have a stack that board members all need to sign? You thought I was joking when I said that Michelle has a stack of papers for us all to sign.
The same line on all of the sheets.
Okay,
Like you
gotcha.
have fourth line.
Okay.
I understand this process is absolutely thrilling for everyone in attendance this evening, but it is one of those steps that needs to be done in a public meeting. So if you'll forgive us as we move through that stack of papers. And in the meantime, I would like to remind folks that the district budget vote is scheduled for May 6, 2021, at Leavitt Area High School Auditorium at 6 p.m. And the 19th regular meeting will begin immediately after.
But that's fine.
Well, it appears that we're moving down the line here as rapidly as everyone can. So again, thanks for your patience. I think in the meantime, I'll continue moving down through our agenda. That leaves us the only item on budget work session 4.7 other. And I'm not aware of any other items of business we need to take up as regards the budget. If not, we'll move along to adjustment to the agenda. Do we have adjustments to the agenda?
We do. We do not need item 10.3, which is the executive session for ESP. And we don't need 10.4, which is the action as warranted after that. We don't need 10.7, executive session for TTEA. And we don't need 10.8, which is the action as warranted after that.
Thank you. That brings us to committee reports. Finance Committee, Yuri.
We have not met, but we would we'd like to report out that the district was able to lock in LP prices for next year and chose to do so.
Thank you. PTB, we have also not met. Joanne, I understand you still have a stack of
We have not
signature.
met. We're meeting Tuesday, April 13th.
So Tuesday, April 13th, that committee will be meeting. Thank you. Olivia.
I am happy to announce that G Club, Student Council, JMG are all going to be partnering, as well as National Honor Society, all going to be partnering on Earth Day to do a trash cleanup. Yep. Okay, yeah, sure. All of our 4 clubs are going to be partnering to do a trash cleanup in the community. Students are going to be gathering in small groups, or they can also do it with their family to pick up trash in the community, just as a form of community service and to celebrate Earth Day. And that's going to be on April 22nd.
Excellent. Thank you. 6.5, non-teaching negotiations, AFSCME and ESP. Jessica.
ESP has not met. AFSCME, we did meet this week, and we were given a proposal that we will be looking over.
Thank you. And AFSCME, actually, we do have an executive session on that, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Brings us to the superintendent's report. Kim.
Thank you. The Facilities and Transportation Search Committee has met and reviewed applications. We are moving forward with interviews next week. Michelle, I'll be announcing her resignation once we formalize her letter of resignation, but we are still going to move forward, since we have told everyone, with advertising for the business manager position. So you will start to see advertisements for that coming up very shortly. And we had as Jessica just said, we had our first negotiation session with AFSCME on Tuesday evening, and 10.5, as Betsy said, is an executive session to discuss that further. Andrew Scoggin County Superintendents worked with St. Mary's to provide a vaccination clinic for employees in a certain age span. On March 13th, there's a clinic this Saturday so that those same people can get their second shot, and it's at the same place as well. And we have had several more positive cases this week in several of our Turner schools that have resulted in a lot of close contact tracing and quarantining as well.
Thank you. That brings us to public comment. So from a process standpoint, just so we make sure that anyone who wishes to speak for public comment, if you could come up and use the microphone at the podium, and then at that point we can make sure we get names attached to the right people as well. So we have folks that are interested in public comment. And this would be your opportunity to perhaps speak on the proposals for increased in-person instructional time, if that's something that folks are interested in speaking to. Don't be shy. Excellent. So just let us know who you are when you come up to the podium, and we'll make sure that we record that, and we'll be
All right.
excited to hear you. Thank you.
My name is Ethan Rabalsi. I'm currently a senior at Leavitt Area High School. I would first like to thank the school board for giving me the opportunity to step up and speak tonight, despite knowing I know you guys love signing papers and budget meetings, but I will try to be as brief as possible. Monday night, April 5th, a survey was sent out to the student population at Leavitt. The survey covered the challenges that students might face with returning to school 4 days a week, including asking about the students' mental health, thoughts on the pandemic, and the possible consequences or benefits a return would have on the student's social life. This survey wasn't sent out by the school board, nor was it sent out by Leavitt. This survey was made by a student who had concerns and didn't feel like hers or her classmates' opinions were being heard. In just the 3 days since Monday, the survey has already had over 300 responses, including 159 typed answers about each student's individual concerns involving a return to school. And I did, if you guys are interested, I have about 15 copies of the survey. I'll just leave it up here, and if you want to look at that. I think if the school, some of the comments included, I think if the school just shut down not long ago, when we were only in school 2 days a week, why go back? I just feel that the cases will only go up from there if we attend 4 days a week. I feel safer and more comfortable with 2 days of in school. And why change it during the last quarter? We were unable to have homecoming, winter carnival, and other school events earlier this year, and things are practically the same now. However, I'm not speaking tonight to simply repeat the concerns that I know my colleagues have said before me at other school board meetings. Instead, I come to the school board with a simple request. No matter the decision, whether we go back 4 days or keep things the way it's been all year, I ask the school board to simply open up the conversation with the students in the district. In watching previous school board meetings and listening to the superintendent's messages, I've seen and heard a lot of parent feedback, but so far little to no input from students and teachers. The two groups that this decision affects, the teachers and the students, have seemingly had the smallest role in this process. Our right to participate in this decision as a student body was taken from us by a lack of opportunities to share our voices in an easily accessible setting, such as the 2 surveys that were sent out to our parents. It is my hope that by seeing the student survey's results, the school board will be able to understand our desire as a student body to have influence in the choices that directly affect us. I understand that this decision is a lose-lose for everyone involved, and that there's no decision that will be 100% perfect for everyone. However, I truly feel that if the students are given the same opportunities our parents were to share their voices, a common ground can be reached. And you folks will have to forgive me. I am a high school student, so I do have a bad habit of ending every speech with a quote from a dead man. In the words of Henry Ford, coming together is a start, staying together is progress, and working together is success. Let's start working together tonight so we can make successful decisions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, and I would just make a note that school board members did receive those survey results by email as well, so thank you for bringing the printed copies though.
Hello, my name is Margaret Kenyon, and I'm also a senior here at Leavitt. First and foremost, I want it to be known that I love school, and I value my time here dearly. At first, I was set on going back, but over the past few weeks, I realized that the risk outweighed the rewards. I think that, in my understanding, you can tell me if I'm wrong, that right now, not everyone has to quarantine if they're in the same room. But if we have to change the setup of the room, this could have an impact on the number of kids who would have to quarantine. Look at Auburn and Freiburg, for example. Auburn just went back 4 days and is already remote again, and Freiburg went back and had to quarantine 150 students and teachers in a week. Furthermore, Androscoggin County has the second highest cases in Maine. If we go back 4 days a week, immediately after a break, when kids may potentially gather without following guidelines, there is a good chance we have to go remote again. As a senior who takes 3 AP classes, I can vouch that it is a lot harder to do schoolwork if we are remote. Sure, being in school for 4 days a week without being remote would be ideal, but that just isn't something we can promise right now. Right now, kids need certainty, and it is a lot safer to bet that we won't go remote if we keep things how they are with the limited time that we have left. I'd rather have 2 days a week guaranteed than to risk missing an entire week of class because we have to go remote. Additionally, the promise of prom for my senior classmates who didn't have it last year and currently has the privilege of potentially having it this year. If we go back 4 days a week, things could change and we could risk possibly going remote again, and we could also risk losing our spring sports partially. All things considered, I feel that it is in the students' and teachers' interest to keep things how they are and going to school 2 days a week. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have other folks that would like to speak?
Good evening. My name is Jeff McMurray. I wasn't sure if this was the right time to speak, but there were several questions that were raised at the last meeting that I was hoping might be addressed before some of the public comment period. For instance, one of the questions that we had brought up last time was the parent surveys that went out. There were a lot of responses of overwhelming, a large number, but none of them actually had numbers put to them. It's overwhelming numbers, 75% of the responses, or is it 55% of the responses? I know that we had asked for those, and they didn't, at the time, the superintendent didn't have it at the moment, but I was hoping that we would have them for today. I asked the question about how close we were with transportation issues, knowing that getting these students to the school was one of the biggest, most daunting tasks with the one child per seat outside of the siblings. But we didn't have a chance to address that at the last meeting. Are we going to have a chance to do that now? What are the bus capacities? How close are we? Speaking as one that I had to take today off because I got a call the other day because both of my kids were on the bus and there was a positive that the superintendent had alluded to. So now we are home for the next 10 days. I'm just curious as to how quickly that we're going to push this through without addressing some of these in a format that the rest of us can understand. If we're good and we have plenty of space, that's great. But I know that was a very daunting challenge, but I haven't heard any information about how that was going to get resolved and how close we are to that. Like I said, they didn't have a chance to speak to that last week.
And I think some of those questions are certainly going to be addressed in 8.1 with that discussion, so
Okay.
hopefully that will answer some of those.
And you said that was going to be an executive session?
No, not at
Oh,
all.
okay, that's
This
right.
is all open meeting.
I misheard you.
Yep,
That's why
so it's actually agenda item 8.1.
Okay.
So, yes, so it's right after this.
And that's fine. I guess I was just kind of curious. I had hoped that we would have that information, I mean, unless we have a chance to speak again after, if any of that information calls into question or makes us think of something else that we would like to ask, if there's a chance to at least comment on that after we get that information, that might be helpful for the rest of us. As Ethan had so eloquently put earlier, to me, which I was very impressed with sort of the poise of a young man in the middle of all of this that's going on and addressing the board. The parents got several surveys, but the students and teachers didn't. I'm very happy that he and the student body put forth enough effort to really come together and get the school board the information from their perspective. But I know the teachers didn't have a chance to do that either. And I spoke to a whole bunch of them, and I was just curious if the board or anybody else had heard from the teachers or any of their concerns. Because it wasn't close, the number of teachers that had significant concerns and felt like they were not being heard or addressed. And the best case scenario was not, yes, I would love to go back. It's, I'm very happy to do whatever the case is, as long as we can be safe about it. Which is what everybody wants to do. But when, of the 53 people I talked to, 44 were very uncomfortable with the speed and the lack of input that they had. That's a significant number of teachers that are not feeling like they're being, at least they're not feeling like they're being heard, or that their concerns are being addressed in a manner that makes them comfortable or feel like they are addressed. So I had questions about that. And then the other thing that was brought up at the last meeting was several of the student grades have too many kids for the classroom, so they're going to be taking students out to combine for another group. Who gets to make that decision? And is that something that, I know that Mr. Petrie had addressed that to some extent with the second grade, that he would be making some phone calls, because several of the surveys had mentioned parents were okay with that. If you run into, I have 5 kids that are okay with that, are you going to add more to that and take students out of the classrooms that their parents are not okay or that would not be comfortable with that? And who gets to make that decision? Is that the teachers? Is that the principal? Is that the administrative staff? That's just something that I'd like to hear more on and have addressed before we start making the final decision on what's going forward.
Thank you. Other folks that would like to speak at this point in the agenda?
My name is Sarah Willett. I am a parent of a child who attends Green Central School. I would like the board to consider finding a way for the lower grades to attend school 4 days a week. My daughter is in 3rd grade and is not doing well with remote learning. The toll this is taking on all of us parents who are doing our very best to be educators is hurting the relationships with our children. It's heartbreaking when your child is crying in tears and telling you that she just wants to give up. I am sad that these children in the lower grades are being passed by. I want to know why it is okay for my child to be left behind. Our children need to be back in school. It's detrimental to their education, their health, and their well-being. I'm scared to look into the future and see the impact that this has had on our children. We need to make this happen. I know the school board is committed to keeping our children safe, but the kids' mental health and social development are a real concern to us parents. So I'm asking you to please reconsider and make this happen.
Thank you. Do we have other folks that would like to speak?
Hello, my name is Jason Cody. I'm a senior at Levitt Area High School, and I support going to school 4 days a week because I look at it as every student has a right for in-person learning, and that the kids who don't want to go to school 4 days a week and want to keep it the regular way should just stay home, because honestly they feel like they're afraid of the virus. And I feel strongly that we should be in school 4 days a week, and that it has caused not being in school 4 days a week a lot of mental health for kids who have not been in school because they decided they weren't going to take their education seriously because they were off 3 days instead of being in school the full 4 days. for 5 days, but I understand that we can't go 5 days, it has to be 4 days. But I honestly think we should be in school 4 days a week, and that kids who don't want to be in school 4 days a week should just stay home and be remote. And on that note, I end.
Thank you. Do we have other folks that would like to speak during this?
Hi, Rachel Meshu from Green. Parents out there, getting up here isn't easy. I'm like freaking out. I am 100% in support of getting our children back to more in-person time. And so if you're scared of me to get up here, just stand up and just show who you are if you're in support of having more in-person school. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to speak at this point?
Hi, my name's Bob Gould. I'm from Green. I have a granddaughter who's a freshman here at Levitt, who should love to be back in school, but is afraid of the fact that where she is remote, she never got really any orientation as to things in the school. Her teachers, she's having a hard time. She doesn't get the feedback from her teachers like she should be. And the social aspect of what she's having is she's not getting the in time with her fellow students. So right now she is lost as to coming back to school. Looking at, she tried it at the beginning, 2 days a week, and it was hard because the rest of the week she was totally lost as to what was going on. I'd love to see her back in school. I also understand where she's coming from as a freshman and not knowing the teachers in the school, where things are in the school, and just being thrown back in and saying, okay, 4 days a week you're going to be back in school. Socially, I don't know if she could handle it right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak at this point? If not, thank you folks for sharing your thoughts on this, and I would also applaud our students that spoke to us this evening. They were very articulate and certainly very candid as well. So we appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts, and clearly communication is always better. So thank you for that. So that brings us to agenda item 8.1 under old business, and that is continuance of discussion on proposal for increased in-person instructional time. I'm going to turn that over to Superintendent.
Thank you, Betsy. So I appreciate the students who spoke as well. Emmy had actually sent me the results of that survey data this afternoon. And in addition, I just wanted the board to know, she also called my office to make sure that I had the opportunity to see it before the board meeting tonight, which I thought was extremely considerate. I also thought that it was wonderful that she had stepped up with her peers to get some information to us. And so I forwarded that information to the board members so that they too could see the results of the student survey data. So we have been working all year on what is best for students, and all year we have been hearing concerns about students who are struggling with remote learning. So we put together the re-entry team earlier this year to work on ideas on how to further support students and staff, and in particular, those students who were struggling with the remote learning days. Some good thinking happened on that team. And then the governor began to loosen restrictions on indoor and outdoor gatherings as well as travel. And Maine has remained and still is in a green designation, which is the best designation that we want, much lower chance of spread. The national CDC, as you know, has reduced their 6-foot distance requirement to 3 feet as long as masks are on. We also have more Mainers getting vaccinated all the time, which is a really positive thing. And the data to support, we have the data that supports and continues to support that school environments are safer than those environments out in the general community. So all of the positive cases that we've had this year have not been from school spread. They have happened outside in the community, and the student has come in, and there's a result of that. But it's not been because of school. And the reason that is because we are consistently implementing the health and safety measures. Kids are always wearing masks, we're distancing, we're hand washing, sanitizing, we're doing the daily health assessment, all of those things. So, as the governor began to loosen restrictions up, we began talking about, well, maybe now's the time to consider bringing more students in for in-person learning, because we've known that students have been struggling, and we've always got at the center of our work what is best for students and how do we offer more support. So we began to remeasure all of our spaces. We got storage containers delivered so that we could remove all of the classroom furniture that we had moved out of classrooms and we're storing into those containers to try to optimize every square inch of space that we have. Principals have worked closely with their leadership teams about ideas that could work. They've also spoken with staff about plans that they have, and feedback has been welcomed. And the point of surveying the staff, we haven't surveyed the staff, but principals have certainly been working in their schools with their staffs. And principals have also done a good job of making sure that I'm aware of the concerns that have been brought to their attention from teachers. And those concerns, just like some of the concerns we heard this evening and that we heard last Thursday as well, are valid concerns. Are we going to be able to keep the distancing? Will we be able to do this safely? With more students in, are we likely to have more positive cases or larger quarantine? So will we end up with having a lot of people out and having to close schools, and will that not be as good as just keeping the current hybrid model? So all of those concerns are things that we don't know, and they're all valid concerns. There's also a lot of change required with this. There have been countless hours going on with all the planning and what can work, just with the goal in mind of how do we better support our students. And we know that in-person is better for students. It is. And so we keep looking toward that and what we can do. The hard part is we have some good news because we have some buildings that have very high enrollments. That's generally very good news. But when you're looking for distancing requirements to implement it, it makes it very difficult. So I'm speaking specifically of Green Central School and also of TRIP as well. So we continue to say, how can we get students in for more in-person time? Make sure that we are implementing health and safety measures. Make sure that we're keeping school environments safe as they have been, safer as they have been all year long. So once we did the work to see what it would have to look like if we were to bring more students to increased in-person time, we put out the first survey just to say, okay, heads up, here are some of the things that may have to be in place in order to increase in-person time. Because if we'd heard back from parents saying, we're not interested in having kids lined in the hallway, we're not interested in, then that would have been some good information for us to consider. Maybe this is just not going to be able to work. However, a majority, and Teresa's working on that percentage, majority of parents, and this isn't a close, like I think someone asked us at 75%, it was at least 75%, said we want kids in. Parents were saying we want kids in more. So after we had the chance to work with our leadership teams and talk to our staff and come up with what the proposals would be, and we presented those to the principals presented those to the board last Thursday, it was time to give that specific information back to parents in a second survey, so they would know exactly what we were talking about, right? Not this kind of, well, would it be okay if we had kids? But no, this is what it would look like. And the question was, do you want to send your child back to more in-person? Is it a yes, you want this to happen, or is it a no, you would prefer that we remain in the current hybrid schedule model? So it was very clear a yes or no, so we would have that data, and I have that data for us this evening. Let me see, so on Monday, yes, so on Monday I sent the video message and the second survey. We've had 780 responses to that survey, and this is not to say that we haven't been hearing the concerns. So I've been hearing concerns about students' social, emotional well-being, about their mental health, about feelings of isolation. I've been hearing concerns about students who have not been engaging on remote days, who are falling behind in their studies, concerns about the learning gaps that are occurring as a result of that. I have also heard the concerns about, Kim, we've got 6 weeks of school left. This is a lot of change for 6 weeks of school. I don't disagree. This is a lot of work. This whole year has been for all of us. Our kids, our students, our families, our staff, the board, has been a lot of work. And as long as we're in a pandemic, we can expect constant change. That's how it's going to be, I think. In any case, concerns about all of this for an additional 2 days a week. And what I say to that is, but 2 days a week in person is better than 0 additional days in person, right? If we can have more in person this spring, we will be able to help some of our struggling learners and all of our students. And we will be able to hopefully end this year well. The other part of that too is we will get a chance to see where are our students, right? What are those learning recovery plans we're going to have to put into place for next year? And by the way, what is next year going to look like? Because it's one thing to do a lot of planning about what this can look like. It will be another thing to have students come back in and to live those plans and to see what is working and what is not working, and then to readjust. Because I am in no way making a promise that any of this will be smooth or without bumps along the way, because it will. But if we can learn those things this year while we're giving some additional in-person time, then for next year, we're already that far ahead in the planning as far as increased in-person time. And I think that most people would agree that by next fall, we would really like to see more in-person time. I don't think that we can keep going on a second year with this hybrid model. So we have been hearing a lot of the concerns, and again, they're valid. The cases are rising again, so we have concerns about that as well. You hear the CDC and doctors and epidemiologists talking about the variants, and some of those are more contagious. You hear about certain age groups that tend to be getting infected more frequently right now. So this information keeps coming and evolving, and we're monitoring it closely. So we definitely have divided perspectives on whether we should increase in-person time or whether we should stay in the current hybrid model. I think, let me see. Ethan, I think when Ethan spoke this evening, he said it, this is a, I don't think he said it's a, I think he said it's a lose-lose situation, because we have different perspectives, and it's not like the facts support one decision over the other, right? So what we know, though, is that school environments are safer, and what we know is that in-person instruction is better for our students, and what we know is that students have been struggling with the remote learning time. So that's at the focus of our decisions. So change is extremely difficult. We know that. The pandemic continues to take its toll on all of us, and yes, it will be the end of April before we would be able to start increasing in-person time. So all of those things are true, but again, anything we can do, I think is good to do. So this evening, what I'm going to ask is that principals give updates on their plans and let us know where they are in terms of the transportation, because we spoke last week about the fact that transportation is a potential big barrier for us, because we're still under the one student per seat except for siblings, and that we also have to have the furniture and supplies that we ordered in order to implement these plans. So they're going to give us an update with some of those details. But before they do, I wanted to give some details about the second parent survey. So at Turner Primary School, 85%, first of all, 780 responses to the survey, to the second survey. Turner Primary School, 85% of the parents who responded said yes, they want us to move forward with in-person instruction. 15% said no, we would prefer to stay in the hybrid model for the rest of this year. At Turner Elementary School, 81% of parents said yes, we want you to move forward with increasing in-person learning. And 19% said no, we would prefer to stay in the hybrid model for the rest of this school year. At Green Central School, 74% of parents who responded said yes, we would like you to move forward with the proposal for increased learning, in-person learning. and 26% said no, please stay in the current hybrid model. At Leeds Central School, 72% of parents said yes, please move forward with increased in-person learning, and 28% said no, let's stick with the current hybrid model for the rest of this year. At Tripp Middle School, 70% of the parents said yes to increased in-person learning, and 30% said please stay in the hybrid model. No, please stay in the hybrid model. And at the high school, 65% of parents said let's have increased learning, and 35% said no, stay in the current hybrid model. So that's the parent survey data that we have from that second survey. And this time I'm going to ask the principals to give their updates, and then Betsy, I will be asking the board to consider taking action on how we should move forward with our schedule.
Good evening. So I'm going to start off by just acknowledging a couple of things. In one, I don't care how many times I come up here, it's awkward to get up here for me as well. So I appreciate those that have. And secondly, I'm going to echo some comments that have been made about the students that have got up here to speak today. And I can appreciate it even more so because way back in the early 90s when I was a senior, I also did the same thing at a board meeting. So it's weird, okay? So I get it. You guys did a great job. And actually, it's a proud moment for me to have 3 of my students come up tonight and speak so eloquently, even though I seem to be struggling at this point. So updates for today. One of them, it's part of getting at what Ethan was talking about today and student voice, and ultimately this is the ultimate voice. This is the venue to have your ultimate voice. This is government at its most fundamental level, and it's probably a better lesson, and Mr. Davis is going to text me as soon as I'm done saying this, than several weeks in a government class. Like, this is how it works. So this is really using your voice. So I appreciate that. Less exciting in regards to supplies, desks, and tables. They are arriving here. They're scheduled to be here at 6 a.m. next Wednesday. So well in advance of the 26th. Transportation is not going to be an issue for grades 9 through 12. So that will be not a barrier for us to returning to full 4 days of in-person learning. Let's see, lunches. We've worked, Mr. Galway has been working. He's worn out a couple of pencils trying to figure out a schedule and lunches. We will be doing 4 lunches to accommodate all of the students in the cafeteria, in combination of that with the gym and the bleachers. We're going to have a grid system to number the spots so we know where all the students are sitting to help with any potential contact tracing. And on the topic of contact tracing, I also appreciate the concern around additional contact tracing. I would be more concerned about it if we were doing none right now, but we're doing a really lot of it right now. And I don't know that it would be markedly more, because it's a lot. I can't overstate that. And let's see. Schedule. So we are working on the schedule in addition to the lunches. We're trying really hard, and I think it's going to work out to include our HPT period, which we have not had up to this point this year. So it'll be good to have students back in their small groups working with their HPT teacher. For our freshmen, they really met them once officially when we did orientation back in August. So it'll be nice to have those groups start to build connections that way. And for seniors on the other end, it'll be nice for them to have that time as well. And that was feedback from staff around wanting to include HPT into a schedule if we return. So we've been working on that. I think we have it worked out. I want to be clarified something, and I'm sure where my message got construed, but when students come back for 4 days, they will be having 4 days of academic class time. I've had a couple of folks ask me about that. and thinking that they were going to come back and have 2 days of academics and 2 days of study hall, and that's simply not the case. The intent, and our network leaders, when we first started discussing this, were very clear on this. Our intent when we return is to maintain our current curricular pace while we get started, and then we can adjust that as we move forward, but our number one priority coming back is to maintain the pace and then to reestablish some routines that have been lacking up until this point. So that would be that. And I think that is all of my updates for today. Any questions for me?
Any questions for Mr. Shaw? Okay, thank you for updating us.
Good evening. So at TRIP, we have our desks that we need. We don't have the plexiglass that we need for the science rooms that have the long tables. Lori assures me that our busing situations are all set, so I don't have to worry about the busing. Seventh grade's not going to be a problem to get in, but I just cannot fit the 8th grade in. Those groups, as I told you last week, are too large. They're groups of 18 to 23 students, and our rooms, the way they're configured, I cannot get that many desks into a classroom 3 feet apart. Any questions for me?
Questions for Gail? Richard?
I'm very concerned about the fact that students are being discriminated against, and that's what I think we're doing here, and I think we need to make as big an effort as we can to bring all the students in, not just the 7th graders, but the 8th graders as well. And I would say the same thing about the lower grades at Green. They all need to be given the same opportunities.
And following CDC guidance is what I'm doing exactly in the shape of the classrooms we have at TRIP. And if you've ever been down the Bengal wing, you'll know what I'm talking about. I cannot safely have 23 students in a classroom in any wing.
Thank you. Other questions for Gail?
So I know we talked about last meeting that it was going to be, you had to go 4 days a week or you would have to stay remote, correct? So I wonder about that 8th grade group that would have to stay hybrid. Would there be options within that group for like the students that maybe need more?
So we have 17 8th graders who, because of their situation, have needed the extra support, and for those individual situations, we have fit them in. So I'm thinking of students with IEPs, 504s, attendance issues, other specific needs that we have worked with families for months and months and months, and we're like, okay, this is the only solution for that child. So yes, we are pulling some of those 8th graders in. They're really, really struggling 8th graders. And I want them all there, I really, truly do. But I just can't do it safely with the CDC guidance that I'm working with now.
And I absolutely believe you, Gail. I'm just looking at the 70% of parents that said yes versus 30% that said no at the middle school. And I wonder if there's any wiggle room that those 70% can be given that priority of in-class and that 30% can be honored in the hybrid. I don't know if that's a conversation.
I have to look closely at the survey because the 7th graders would have to, we won't have cohort A and B with the 7th grade. So cohort A and B for the 7th grade won't be an option because we want to get them all in and acclimated as a group and streamline them to give them the biggest boost we can before their 8th grade.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for Gail? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm going to update you on
TES and our road back. So last week I gave you a line of a number of different stages in transitioning back. So I want to let you know that this past week, April 5th, we were able to change our student and arrival dismissal procedures. TES has begun to shift the arrival and dismissal to the road behind Tripp Middle School. Today was our first day with this transition, and it went smoothly. Additionally, with the help of the technology department, we were able to come up with a solution for networking issues outside of the building that negatively impacted our dismissal procedure. We are excited to have our pickup patrol back up and running and anticipate that that will help with the additional vehicles should we return with all students. We saw a 3-minute improvement this afternoon with our dismissal just in our first day. We also took the 9 recess zones and made them into 2 playground zones. They've been consolidated and classes have begun to engage as grade levels. Students have been very excited about this, and I enjoy being outside today watching them play and interact with their peers that they have not had an opportunity to within the school setting. So we were able to accomplish that as well. Storage units has arrived, and is half of the gym has been emptied of excess items. We still have some more to load. Our desks are scheduled to arrive on the 14th. I believe they're being dropped at the high school first and then coming to TES. And our Turner bus drivers have graciously volunteered to come and help custodians assemble them and set up furniture so that learning spaces are ready to go. Additional furniture items, folding camp chairs will arrive on Monday. Classroom chairs will arrive Wednesday. Sneeze guards have been ordered, and their arrival is expected between the 9th and the 12th of April. The tent that we have ordered is scheduled to arrive by the end of the month, and portable whiteboards and a projector screen have been ordered and are on the way. This afternoon, I was able to meet with my school leadership team. We met to discuss a number of issues, one of which was to define what common expectations will be for outdoor learning and what that will look like. We already have the 300 clipboards in, and we're going to define what outdoor learning will look like so that we are maximizing the amount of time that we have with students in our all academic areas. The facilities project, Siemens is finishing up the work in the kitchen, which will mean that items in the cafeteria will be moved back into the appropriate storage areas. Additionally, remaining floor vents in the gymnasium have been closed off. This will allow the gym that will act as a combined grade 6 classroom to be conducive to learning. Breakfast and lunch. We have determined that certain grade levels will not have to move around the building as much to eat as we once thought. This means that it is less likely that we will need to utilize the JP wing, hallway, or central common areas for meals. This is great news. We're going to be able to serve our students in areas that are within their pods, and I like much better thinking at night that not envisioning kids lined up down the hallway, but within a section. So there's been a lot of creative problem solving, and folks have worked together to do that. I can't say enough about Dave Roberts and our lead, Denise Cochran, who is our lead manager, kitchen manager, and what they are able to do, and wonderful to work with to make anything happen, to feed our kids and to work these really tricky situations. We are very fortunate to have them. Student routines, building leadership team has worked to iron out morning and lunch routines that will streamline meal times and movement around the building. The schedule, unified art schedules have been examined and adjustments have been made where needed in order to cause the least amount of impact on classrooms. TES will maintain its rotating schedule with students receiving special unified arts classes twice a week. I just want to also say that
I think it's to state the obvious, we're a community who, like so many, are hurting because we're still experiencing a global pandemic. And as much, these decisions are really, really hard. But I know that in all of our conversations that we have when we're talking about this, I think that everybody knows we love our kids, we hurt for our parents, and we want our kids to be back in school and to be growing, and we want, there's a lot of planning to be done for our kids to return because there's a lot of healing to do. And we look forward to being able to make those good plans for when we are able to have them all back 5 days a week.
Thank you. Did anybody have any questions?
Oh, sorry.
And just to double check on the transportation front, there are no insurmountable hurdles there, is that correct? Or?
Every indication that I have had speaking with Lori is that we would be all set. I think that one thing that I noticed from my surveys for at TES is that we have a high percentage of parents that are able to transport their children or make arrangements, and I don't by any means, so Betsy, pretend to have any definites about any of that, but it's looking like we'll be in pretty good shape. And I haven't heard that I will need to have any multiple runs, but I think Brian and I spoke, and there might be some double runs there.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to give you a TPS update, so thank you. Like Superintendent Brandt shared, our storage compartment has arrived. Our gym has been mostly emptied and items have been placed in our storage compartment. I want to thank our custodial staff, lifting tables and organizing them. We have a custodian who is meticulous, and if you went into my storage unit, you would be impressed at finding little nooks and crannies to put things in and how organized it is. So I was quite impressed. I also want to thank my teachers because they had to have all their things removed out of their rooms, and they were kind of put in big piles, I guess, or stacks. So they had to go in and organize it all and make some decisions about this needs to go home, and I would like this to go in storage, and I need this up front so I can get to it later. So my teachers have already begun that work, obviously, since our gym is mostly emptied. So I appreciate that. Like Kelly shared, our playground zones have been consolidated from 4 to 2. And I want to thank our support staff and teachers for monitoring our students. With weather warming up, the kids are loving it outside. We have little baskets full of different trucks and toys and little tennis rackets and things like that for each of our playground zones so that the kids have things to do. They also have taken a liking to sidewalk chalk. So if you ever come to our bus loop, you'll see there's lots of cool art happening on the cement there. Our furniture is in transit, like Kelly and Evan shared. We're getting ours the same day, a little after, first the high school, then the elementary school, and then down to TPS. So I want to thank Cassandra for that because she worked really hard on her orders. Parent drop-off and pickup. So our route isn't necessarily changing, but our times are changing a little bit. So TPS currently has had 110 parents dropping off every morning between cohort A and B combined. And based on the survey results, another 17 parents said that they would be willing to transport as well. So what that means is the line down Cobb Road might get a little long. So the idea is to start parent drop-off at 8:30 before the buses come so that we can use the bus loop to drop off cohort A. So cohort A drop-off time will begin at 8:30. Then, normally at 8:40, all the cars parked on the road, the buses come in, and then the parents in cohort B drive through the lower parking lot. So cohort B drop-off will begin at 8:40. Then, at the end of the day, our cohort A parent pickup time will be 2:45, which is a little bit earlier. Normally it's at 3:05. And then cohort B parent pickup will be at 2:55. So the reason for the earlier time is so that we can use the bus loop, and all 110 plus parents will be able to come through and pick up their kids before the buses even come. So I'm hoping to have enough time to allow that process to happen. I do want to thank my staff who wear the yellow vests every day escorting students to the cars. I have a committed staff that we work really hard to make sure our kids get safely home. So I want to thank them for that. Kelly had mentioned that we have 2 daycares that have a large number of students. So Lori has informed me that we're probably going to be completing double runs. So what that might look like is the bus might go to TPS, drop off students, come to TPS, drop off students, then go back out, go to the daycare, pick up that whole cluster, and then bring them back. I anticipate breakfast going until 9:30, but my hope is as we get better that it'll go faster. In our gym, we're going to have 16 desks in 5 rows, so that way because I have 4 teachers at each grade, so each teacher, their student will have an assigned seat in one of those rows. And then every morning, because the desks are numbered, we're going to go through and write down every kid and what number they're eating in. Even though they're 6 feet apart, we still want to have that daily seating chart for breakfast. So, and then any overflow is going to go into our cafeteria. So I don't know how well you're familiar with TPS, but there's a door that goes from the cafeteria into the gym. So like I mentioned last time, the students that are eating will come through the front doors, down the hall past the library, into the cafeteria, grab their breakfast and go into the gym and find their desk. And then we'll have teachers in there to help support that process as well. Allied Arts, I want to thank our Allied Arts teachers. They were able to design a schedule that allows them to begin at 9:30 and end at 2:35 so that we can do our dismissal at 2:45 and so that we can do breakfast until 9:30. I mentioned breakfast, so the kids that aren't eating at 8:30 if they're in cohort A, they're going to go straight to their classroom, so they're going to have a little bit more time to settle in than usual. Normally our kids don't enter until 8:40. All of the students that do eat breakfast, they'll be able to go into the gym, and by the time the 8:45 buses come, many of our kids would have already eaten and been headed to their class. So my hope is kind of to cycle kids through breakfast in the morning. I talked about lunch. And then the grade 2 configuration information will be forthcoming. I know that came up today up here, but based on the parent results, I had a group of parents that are willing to have their child transition teachers in order for us to be able to do this. So after there's a vote on this, I plan to reach out to the families to get specific information to them. We do, like I mentioned, have a 4th teacher. We had to hire in January because we had students registering and we needed them to have a place to learn. So I've already added a teacher who has a group of kids, so it will be a matter of moving some other students into that room. In other news, our April word of the month is cooperative. I want to thank our Turner PTC. They did a wellness kit for every teacher, kind of like a survival kit, and in it was a variety of different really cool items to help morale and really to support our teachers. And then Mrs. Carver is running our Kids Heart Challenge. So kids are learning jump roping, they're learning healthy heart habits, and we're doing a fundraiser that's virtual in honor of Kids Heart Challenge. Does anyone have questions about TPS?
Questions about TPS updates? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. Here to give you a brief update on the proposal provided to the board last week. Our GCS leadership team has indeed rezoned our playground based on our current plan that was rolled out last week. Teachers are currently reteaching expectations based on the new zoning, and new locations will begin this coming Monday. Like at the other schools, we do have our storage unit delivered on our blacktop. We also have a shed there. And I did a little recess duty today, and I had a little actually ask me if I lived in one of them. I'm thinking, kinda, yeah, But yeah, so that was fantastic. Our teachers have been working on planning for their instructional days coming up and what those potentially would look like. We've also been coordinating with the transportation department around what impact the return of our students in grades 4 to 6 would have, and at this time, it looks like transportation for our returning students would have an impact on busing that are going to require an additional run for somewhere between 2 and 4 buses. So the structure apparently it's planned around students attending daycares. So for example, in the morning, students riding a bus from their residence would be dropped off at GCS. The same bus will then leave, go to an assigned daycare, pick up the students. Those students then return to GCS to drop those students off. And then for dismissal, the process would be done in reverse. Students on those buses who attend the daycare will load first, leave GCS, be delivered to the assigned daycare, and then those buses will return to GCS, pick up the students who are being dropped off at their residences, and then begin the rest of the bus run to get those students home. That's a necessary piece. It will have an impact on the amount of instructional time, but based on the numbers that we have right now, we're looking at requiring 2 breakfasts in the morning anyway, 2 different waves. So we're trying to coordinate. We don't have exact times as to when the buses will arrive, but we're planning on, as usually like within the first couple weeks of the school year, things tend to tighten up. So we're hoping that the exact same thing will happen. So we'll be able to coordinate the times. And it won't be perfect because we will have some kids in classrooms, and then we'll have other ones coming. So we're going to try to coordinate that as best we can. This week we received lots of feedback from members of the community, and all ideas are appreciated. We shared the ideas with the membership of our leadership team, and we analyzed both for feasibility and any potential barriers, and we really considered all of the points. As was pointed out last week, GCS has the second highest number of students in our district, second only to Leavitt Area High School, along with the widest array of student ages from pre-K through grade 6. We also have an upstairs and a downstairs. We have a web of hallways and wings to navigate, and then couple that with distancing requirement, that makes appropriate and safe supervision with our current staffing. It's a genuine challenge. It truly is. And we have tried everything. We have, a measuring tape simply isn't adequate enough. We had one of our custodians create the COVID stick. Took 2 meter sticks. They overlap by 3 inches in the middle, and that's the COVID measuring stick. We are in the gym, like moving tables around, measuring 6 feet from head to head. How many can we fit? Can we fit in some additional desks? So we are really, we are knee deep in it. We are really trying hard. We had suggestions about can't you feed the kids in the hallway? Some of our hallways are as thin as 6 feet wide, so it would be kids in a row. I've got concerns about proper supervision when you have littles eating. I worry about choking. I also worry about potential, goodness forbid, if there was ever an emergency and we needed to access egresses, then we've got blocked hallways. So there are a lot of pieces there. In addition, the adequate supervision. I'm thinking in one particular area we have a tendril of hallways that just sort of go one off of the other. So in order for having adequate supervision, I would not feel comfortable just having 1 or 2 adults. We need legit a lot of adults for those various hallways, just to make sure we've got line of sight that we would in order to keep those kids safe, because we really do need to plan for the worst, hope for the best, and so that's a piece that we really tried to look at. We are very much like Turner Primary. We're using the sticker system too. We're going to have stickers on every seat in the gym, and we're going to have assigned seats there in the gym for every lunchtime that we have. We're also doing that for all the specials as far as for contact tracing. That's not an easy case because in many of those cases you have a couple dozen different seating charts for one specialist, but we're doing that for the classrooms, we're doing it for the specialists. We're doing the same thing for our gymnasium / cafeteria now. Cafeginatorium is what we used to call that when you have the all-purpose room. As far as the small group of targeted students in grades K to 3 that I mentioned last week and the possibility of bringing them back 4 days a week, what we're doing right now is using our data around students who are currently considered truant. We're also looking at chronically absent data too, and we're starting our planning from there. So that is continuing. I would like to take a minute and acknowledge the difficulty around this issue. This is challenging work. There's no question. There's a lot of passion. And like I said last week, our goal is to try to get all of our kids in, 100% of our kids in, and do so safely within the guidelines that we're given. What I feel very fortunate about is that GCS has a really strong team of professionals will work tirelessly to problem solve, and we do the very best we can with the solutions that we can provide with the requirements and the limitations that we have in place. AKA, we need to make the least worst decision, because no decision in this pandemic is an easy one. So that's what I have from me.
Questions on that one? Yes.
Do you expect parent drop-off and pickup to be an issue? I know at Green Central, it's been a little bit hairy where to go for the parents that are dropping off and picking up. Do you expect that volume to increase, and if so, which way will it go?
I know, right? The answer is there's a likelihood there. Usually we like to partner with the sheriff's department when we need a little bit of help. Fortunately, people are generally very kind to our staff out there. That's another duty that started this year for the very first time. Maybe the impact will probably not be as significant as it would be if we were able to get 100% of our kids back, because we typically estimate probably between 80 and 90 cars, if that were to happen, every morning. So yeah, we're looking at, possibility, is it going to back up to 202, that type of thing. So I really, I want to partner with facilities to see what we can do. I have some ideas of my own, like for example, maybe a right turn only when you leave the parking lot, and then double back onto 202, something like that, because that's where a lot of that hang up is. Fortunately, our staff has been really great, and as gaumy as it can be sometimes, it's smoother than it was at the beginning of the year, and smoother than I expected it to be, quite frankly. Parents have been fantastic about it. So yeah, that's another one of those, do we want to keep doing that, or think about last year? You remember what the end of the day used to look like, and it's, again, least worst, right? I personally like this one. I think this is a lot safer for kids. So, but yeah, we're on it. If you have any ideas, email me, please. We're open for sure.
Other questions for? Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Hi. So my desks actually arrived yesterday, and transportation required just a few small tweaks of moving a couple of bus stops to a different bus, and the transportation's all been worked out so that as long as the parents who are currently transporting continue to do so, then we can fit all of the rest of the kids on the buses. Our staff has worked really hard to figure out how we're going to do our lunches, and I give kudos to my kitchen manager as well, Danielle Stevens. She's been amazing and she's wonderful to work with, and we appreciate how flexible she is. Last fall with the COVID money, we ordered a huge tent, so I've put in the work order to get that put up. I haven't seen it yet, but it's here somewhere in the district, and hopefully it'll be up before the 26th. Our specialists have worked to come up with a schedule so that our students will have their specials all throughout the week. I took my truck and my trailer to the Share Center on Saturday and got things to do dividers in our cafe gymatorium so that we can make a section for one of the larger primary classes to have for their meal sections. Our playground is large enough that we didn't need to consolidate any of the zones that we currently have. If we're going to keep the same recess schedule we have, and the most we have is 3 different groups out there at any given time, and our playground is easily divided into 3 parts. And I also want to give kudos to Sarah Taylor. She's an Ed Tech 3 in Title I, and earlier this year she saw the opportunity to apply for a grant for outdoor learning, and she did all the work to apply for that. And we found out this week that we were granted $1,500 to purchase materials for outdoor education. And so she's talking about easy ups, possibly with the screens and some more picnic tables and things, so that outdoor learning will be more comfortable. And that's one of those silver linings that from this COVID experience, that's something that our school will have now for the future, even when we don't have to try to get outdoors as much as we are. We're going to enjoy being able to do that. So we have everything ironed out, and we're just awaiting the decision of the board. Thank you.
Questions for Danielle? Thanks for the update. So at this point, I would entertain a motion from board members on what action you wish to take moving forward. Yep, I'm gonna ask for a motion first, and then I'm relatively certain there will be additional discussion. Do we have someone who would like to make a motion of some sort? Anyone?
I would make the motion that we remain in the hybrid model for the rest of this year.
We have a motion to remain in the current hybrid model for the remainder of the year. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Joanne has seconded that. Discussion on the motion at hand. Joanne?
Discussion?
I sure do. Yes, please.
Okay. I don't know if people can hear me or not, but I was surprised last week to start getting emails about re-entry because I really thought re-entry was going to be for September. And I spent all week trying to convince myself that this plan had some merit. And after 50 or more years in a classroom, I can't convince myself this is really beneficial. It will allow us to say that we brought kids back, and it will make some parents happy. But for me, and for most of the kids I ever worked with, summer starts Memorial Day, which means those last 2 weeks are kind of out of the picture. Things happen, but kids are not really with it after Memorial Day. And we're going to be taking 4 weeks that could be profitable learning time with the cohorts we have. And we're going to be using those 4 weeks, or a large part of them, to do beginning of the year activities to reacquaint the kids with each other and with different expectations. And I just don't see the benefit to all of it. And then beyond that, I would like to say, I love the student survey. Beyond the fact that most of them agreed with me, I even liked the ones that did not agree with me. I thought students really put a lot of thought into what they were saying in their comments. I thought their whole survey was professionally presented, and I just loved the responses they gave, including the many students that were concerned about taking COVID home to family members that they know are compromised. I think they did a fantastic job with the survey. Thank you.
Other discussion? Yes, Olivia.
From the numbers that were presented to us by Superintendent Brandt, I think that the need and the want for 4-day in-person learning, especially at Turner Primary School, Turner Elementary School, and Green, is very clear. And I think that parents have been very at the forefront of this whole situation, and they are seeing their kids struggle at home. I think that there's a need for at least those schools, maybe the elementary schools, to go back. Maybe we can consider some schools going back full-time for 4 days, and possibly, I know there's a lot of concerns around the high school about going back. There's not as much of a push to make that move. Maybe consider keeping the hybrid model for the high school and returning to 4 days for the elementary schools. I don't have a proposal for the middle school. They're kind of in between, but that's just my perspective.
Thank you. And I think we had a question out in the audience as well. Is that accurate still? Yes.
I just had a couple questions that came up from the presentations, or I would have asked them during the public comment, but in regards to the middle school and the point that Richard brought up, I understand that school does have very small classrooms, and I've been in there quite a bit and over the last 4 years. But have we looked at alternative areas at all, including gymnasium, cafeteria, portable classroom? I know in years past, whenever we've gotten into a jam with the amount of kids we had in the school and whatnot, that you know, we've had some portable classrooms before that seemed to work pretty well for a short period of time. So I was just wondering if we've looked at all those alternatives besides the classrooms that we know can't take 23 kids 3 feet apart.
Yes, I have. The cafeteria can seat 27 students with the correct spacing. And I have I have 5 groups of 8th graders that are 18 to 23. So it's hard to choose which group of students can use that space per period. My gym can hold 50, but then I'm combining groups that, it's like yin and yang. I don't know how you could teach 2 separate classes in that space because of the acoustics of the room. And there's no way to do presentations with the technology. So I have looked at every space in the building.
Yep. And the other question I had was, I might have missed the answer to it because I don't hear well. And so the people that responded no to the survey going to be able to continue the way they have been?
I go to the middle school?
No, overall. Okay.
So, no, the answer would be no. We can't offer all kinds of options. We don't even have capacity for that. So it would be to move forward with the proposals as stated, or to stay in the hybrid. It would not be a mixture.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Other discussion from board members? Richard?
Is there any possibility that we could agree not to do the same thing in all the schools? I mean, I hear that maybe 4 or 5 of our schools are perfectly comfortable with 4 days a week and seem to have made arrangements so that it will work with them. So is there a way that we could treat different schools differently based on their sizes and their problems?
Kim, do you want to, I guess I'm not 100% sure whether I understand the question or not. I mean, it seemed that the proposals were particular to the schools and the physical characteristics of the schools and the number of students as it is.
But what I'm trying to get is there a way that we can have some schools like Levitt, Leeds, TES and TPS, for example, go 4 days a week, and the other 2 schools where there are limitations stay with the hybrid?
Who wants to field that question? Because I imagine that might have been a conversation at some, the sense that certainly it seemed the board got was that there were an awful lot of things that were kind of thrown at the wall in many of these discussions, so perhaps that was something that came up.
So the idea of what we did was we worked on what we could do to bring in as many students as we possibly could with the space limitations and the distancing requirements. I think I understand Richard's question to be, well, could some of the schools go forward with their proposals as articulated and other schools just stay hybrid?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, we know how to do hybrid already. So 2 of our schools can't bring all students in full time.
Thank you.
So is there an answer that will work?
So the motion on the table right now is to continue with the hybrid model that we're in. So,
I'm looking for an alternative.
yep, which I think is excellent. I also think, Teresa, would you like to address that, or?
Sure. We spoke, the elementary principals and I talked this afternoon, and a good comment was brought forward. I know how much they've agonized over whether or not they can get all their students in. And for those that can, that's wonderful, but for those that can't, do we not bring anybody back because we can't all be the same? I think what we're really trying to look at is how many students can we give the best that we believe we can in a situation that has just been unprecedented. And I don't know, I'm so proud of the principals because I would not want to be part of another administrative team. They have worked, and when Doug described the measuring, I know what's going on. They didn't even want to take their measuring sticks out until Superintendent Brandt let people know what we were thinking of doing, because everyone knows what the measuring sticks are. Things could potentially change. So I think they are agonizing, I would say, if I could speak for them, that they're agonizing. I'm agonizing over the fact that we can't get all students in. And kudos to the parent that spoke about the K-3 students. I used to teach kindergarten and first grade. I know how important that is. But I would just wonder why we would not do something if we can do it, just because we can't do it for everybody. So I don't know if that answers your question, Richard. If TMS can bring in some students, why would we not bring in those students that we could bring in? And I think that's the proposal that Principal Marine brought forward, and the same with Green Central School, the principal partner brought forward.
Thank you. Other discussion from board members? Yuri.
I mean, I think, without question, everybody wants kids back in, and the surveys were, I'll be honest, they were more in favor than I was expecting. The part that I'm struggling with is that every day, when I open the paper, I either get an email about quarantine numbers going up, or you open the paper and there's another school that's within 10 miles of here shutting down. And I'm fearful that if we were to switch back, and that was to happen, and then we had to switch back again, that would really lose instructional time. And I certainly, am interested in supporting these families, interested in getting all these kids back in school. I'm really worried that, as in other schools that have tried to reopen, that cases are going to go up, and we're going to be right back to where we are, and we'll have just lost that time.
So I think it's important for folks to know that the board certainly had received a number of communications regarding the plans that were proposed, and it's been certainly a tremendous amount of work has gone into all the plans that have been proposed to the board, and every single communication acknowledged that work and was certainly thankful for that, and also acknowledged the fact that this is kind of a thankless situation that we find ourselves in, that there are certainly things to dislike about any of these plans, but at the same time, that focus on responding to the concerns that we've got kids in remote settings that are not doing well, and responding to that and doing better for those students. So I certainly applaud those, and I'll just kind of try to go through and summarize to the best of my ability some of the feedback that board members received, and I apologize to folks if I didn't get everything forwarded to everyone. They certainly intended to, but maybe I'll try to cover things by summarizing them here. I think we heard feedback around 4 days not being enough. Why isn't it 5? That's a refrain that we've heard all year long, and certainly I don't think there's anybody in this room that wouldn't like to see us in 5 days, but the virus is not necessarily playing along with that. Also feedback that 4 days is too much, that the 2 days is working fine, it's not broken, don't fix it. Questions around why now? Why would you bother looking through this now? Why wasn't this proposed earlier? And the other side of that is why not wait? until the fall. Certainly acknowledgement of the challenges for families. Any change in logistics poses if folks have settled themselves into a routine. We had concerns around changing that, but at the same token, we have survey results that suggest that for 70 or 80% of folks that they would be willing to make those changes. The question was posed, is the benefit of 12 additional student days worth this much additional work, this much additional stress? I mean, clearly everyone has had an overabundance of stress in their lives this year, so that was one question that was posed. And again, this has been noted earlier, additional cases statewide is a concern. We also have additional folks being vaccinated and getting to the point where they're fully vaccinated every day, so that's out there. And I guess I just am struck by the fact that all these proposals still have us abiding by CDC guidance. We're doing our very best to provide the safest environment that we possibly can for students and staff, and that's not an easy task. There was feedback around the plan was created too fast. At the same time, there was also feedback that it was too slow. So, I mean, I feel a little bit like Goldilocks here. Like it's too hot, it's too cold. There was actually one, and I always want to note these things because it doesn't happen that often. There was actually one email that was. It was okay. Goldilocks was okay. We were all right on that one. So that's clearly there's lots of different opinions on this, and certainly a lot of work involved in whatever direction the board elects to go in at this point. And I also, Carlos is not present at the meeting this evening, but he did pass along his concerns. Kim, I don't know if you have that in front of you, or I can pretend like my technical skills are such that I can actually pull that email up, and
Do you want me to read it out loud?
that would be great, thank you.
Okay, let's see. He's stuck at work, but that isn't pertinent. Okay, so he said, if I can weigh in on tonight's potential proposal to return to school, I am not in favor of adding the extra days to return to school, to in-school learning. I think it's too much to ask of the students that have reached a comfort level with the current climate that we are in. I think adding the additional days will be too much of a distraction, may potentially increase anxiety amongst some of the students, and it will unfairly put the teachers at a disadvantage with classroom dynamics. I feel we should, here we go. I feel we should focus our efforts on a plan to return to as many in-school days as possible next fall.
Thank you. Other discussion from board members? Olivia?
I think with a lot of the guidance and guidelines changing, we might all be unclear about this. Is there any data that suggests that younger students are not transmitting the virus at as high of a rate as high school students within school environments? So for instance, would an elementary school have less cases and be more safe than a high school environment would be?
Kim, I don't know that there's been anything communicated from an official channel like CDC indicating those things. I mean, I think there are bits and pieces, and Dr. Google says some things, but to this point, I mean, I think folks have based their recommendations and built these plans around what we have for concrete CDC guidance. That doesn't mean that 6 months from now we're not going to continue to learn more about this virus and learn some things additionally, but at this point we're not getting an additional level of specificity like that from CDC. Is that accurate?
Yes,
What I recently, because I'm watching news obsessively, but what I did hear recently was that there appears to be a greater rate of transmission right now between 12 and 19-year-olds.
Jessica?
I think with that data, I think that gives us a little bit more of an idea of what about the COVID transmission. I know that that's a major concern that Yuri voiced, and a lot of parents and students have voiced. And that might be a reason to consider a qualified return and whether some school environments would be safe or not. I mean, I've had personal experience with COVID. I did not get it at school, but I did get it from home environment, and it's not a fun experience quarantining or testing positive or any of that. And I know there's a lot of concerns surrounding should there be a mass quarantine around prom and graduation, is that going to shut down all plans for the end of the year? And I know that's a major concern among seniors, understandably, but also education does come first. I just think maybe we should consider a qualified return if that is an option.
Thank you. Jessica?
I was just going to ask, at our last board meeting, Kim, you and Evan kind of alluded to changes as far as schools and quarantining. Did we ever get any?
We can't do it.
Oh,
So-
I don't know how to turn that one on.
So for starters, I have terrible peripheral vision, so I apologize to everyone from the center of the room to the left, clearly.
I thought I was
And,
speaking loudly. At our last board meeting, I think Kim and Evan kind of alluded to that the CDC or Maine DOE was going to be changing guidelines around quarantining for school districts. Did that happen? Did you get any updated guidance on that?
Yes, Jessica, so what they've done is they've said with the use of, so on the bus, for example, with certain windows down on the bus, that we can measure now 6 feet from a positive student, and that would be the people who have to be quarantined versus the entire bus. However, if all the windows were up, which they shouldn't be, but if they were, then it would have to be the whole bus. So they're trying to help us not to have to quarantine huge groups of people if we can help it. But it's still, you know, if you have a sports event in a gym, for example, it's still the whole gym. But if you were in a classroom with assigned seats and there was no movement from those assigned seats, then you could look at the student who is positive, assuming it's a student, and then move 6 feet, and only those students would need to be quarantined versus the entire class. Now, where that becomes tricky is for students, and maybe it's younger students who might be a little bit more active or moving around, or they may have passed each other to go to a learning station, those kinds of things. So if in doubt, we're going to be careful, right? But if all students are in an assigned seat and haven't been moving around, then it would allow us to quarantine fewer students instead of the whole class.
So, Betsy, can I make a second motion, or do we need to do this one first?
No, we need to deal with the motion on the table unless it's something that would be an amendment to that motion.
I guess it would just be a contradictory motion, so I don't know how that
So no, we should deal with the first motion first. And then there was, did I miss? What did I miss?
One of the girls up there had a comment.
Yes. Did you have a question?
In regards to the question, asking having like further information on how it impacts the younger children, instead of published today in paper here in Maine actually, it shows that half of our cases are actually in kids 30, people 30 and under. So I think that shows that a lot of these cases do affect the younger kids, and those numbers are going up right now. Like we saw today, like there's a little just try to go back 4 days a week like we are, and they're shut down. So like my question is like if we know that we can't get these vaccines out like that quickly right now, like by the time kids do get the second shot who are of age 2, like it's kind of too late. Like it's too late in the year to do that. And seeing how it affects younger kids, like just like really possible right now, I just I don't think we're not too late.
Thank you. Other discussion for board members? And yes, Megan.
I just have a question on the motion. Is this for all 6 schools, or is this for individual schools? What exactly does the motion cover?
So the motion, if I understood it correctly, and Teresa, correct me if this is not what you have recorded, was for the district to remain in the hybrid model that we're employing currently. Is that, so that would be, all operations as that. Other discussion? I just weigh in a little bit that I think that the proposals that have been put before us do achieve additional in-person instruction days for the students, that we've identified that that's something that's needed to improve student outcomes. So I wholeheartedly agree that there is risk in engaging in another change, in having larger groups of students, but we also had a pretty good number of parents who were pretty interested in having their students benefiting from additional days of in-person instruction. So I certainly think that we need to be cognizant of that, and we certainly need to be cognizant of the fact that we know that we have some aspects of remote learning that aren't working for some of our students. We have a young lady up in the back who would like to speak.
Can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
Yes, microphone. And then if it's additional survey data, I think board members all receive that, and Ethan spoke to it earlier as well. Was there something else?
I don't know how detailed, I sent it out kind of late in the day, so I just didn't know how detailed, how in-depth you guys looked at it. One of the questions were, if we were to return to 4 days, would you show up? And this is just strictly for the high school. And almost 70% of students said that they wouldn't show up. The additional 2 days.
I actually had the opportunity to read the survey, and that was actually a question that I took great issue with because I was not aware that high school attendance is no longer compulsory by law.
Absolutely.
I didn't mean it in that way, like if it was their choice. It was more like if they had conflicts at home.
Exactly. I just want to make that distinction, and I think we're all cognizant of the challenges that another change in schedule may very well pose for lots of our families and lots of our students. So thank you, though, for clarifying that. Other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion at hand, which is to remain in the current hybrid model for all of our schools? Those opposed? How about those weighted votes?
Yes, how about that?
So I need to get those again, please.
Okay, I'm sorry. So the yeses to remain, so the motion was remain in the hybrid model for the district for the remainder of the school year. Yes was Joanne, Jill, Crystal, and Yuri.
Okay, so I've got Crystal, Joanne, Jill, and Yuri.
Yes, and then that's correct. And then the no's, do you need the no's or do you just?
I think I'm putting the notes out after that. So that would be Jessica, Richard, Betsy, and Megan?
That's correct.
Thank you.
So just for anyone following along in the audience, so no vote can end in a tie, so we have weighted votes. So the weighting of the votes goes back to the percentage of each town is of the district, if I understand all the eons of history around it. So each board member, in the event of a tie, has different point values assigned to it's like NASCAR. We get different point values assigned to our votes. And no pressure at all for anyone who happens to be counting those votes.
I'm using my calculator to be safe. I'm just going to double check on this. Okay, so yes is 443 and no is 462, so the motion is defeated.
Thank you. Jessica, did you have interest in something else?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we return our students to 4 days a week to the capabilities of each of their class or their administration.
Do we have a
Jessica, would you be willing to use the microphone to repeat that motion so that I can get it? Thank you.
It's not just my left hand side then, sorry.
I even tried to look your way.
I know, but then when you turn, I'm like, now I lost it.
I'd like to make a motion that we return our students to class 4 days a week to the capacity that their buildings can carry them.
Do we have a second?
Second.
That was either Megan or Richard. Yuri.
I don't understand the difference.
So Yuri's question was not understanding the difference between.
My understanding was that the plans put forward were bringing students back 4 days a week to the building's capacity.
Yes.
Yes, that's what I'm proposing, that we're voting for that.
Does that clear up?
It does.
So so the motion is not suggesting something other than the plans that have been presented? Okay. So discussion on going back to 4 days? Or going to 4 days, it's not back to anything. Olivia.
I just need a little bit of clarification on a question that Richard asked. Is it coming down to, yes, we're going back 4 days a week, all schools, and no, we're staying in hybrid for all schools? Or is there an option for maybe hybrid for some schools, full-time for the other schools?
My understanding of the motion on the table is to move forward with the plans that were presented. So that would be the transition to 4 days in the number of spaces that it works in. Other discussion, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
So I have Richard, Betsy, Megan, and Jessica that are in favor of the motion to return students to 4 days.
Those opposed?
Oh, sorry, I got that one. Joanne, Jill, Yuri, and Crystal all voted no to the motion. Olivia did as well, but for policy, I don't count her vote. She knows that.
So the point values would be the same,
Exactly the same, yeah.
with the end result that the motion passes.
Correct.
All right, thank you, and thanks everyone for sharing your feedback on this, and everybody who's watching at home. And I know a number of folks did reach out on this, and this is only the beginning of this part, because it's going to take everybody's cooperation to make it work. We've been very fortunate to have tremendous staff and families throughout the district that have made it work thus far, even though it doesn't look particularly pretty, and nobody would have woken up one morning and said, well, gosh, hybrid or totally remote sounds like a wonderful thing to try on the fly this year. So I think everyone is appreciative of all the work that will undoubtedly continue on this moving forward. So thank you. Moving on to 8.2, discussion and approval of revision energy net billing credit. Is this something that we need a motion for approval on, or you want to clarify that from where the either finance?
So the discussion,
so at Finance Committee, we had a presentation given by Revision Energy
Presentation was to buy energy credits from things like solar farms and wind power, and it's a consortium of power producers that sell districts and businesses credits, which you can use as a credit against your CMP bill. The advantage to the district would be buying those credits is approximately a 15% reduction versus buying T&D and kilowatt and standard rates. The downside to the district is that it's a 20-year commitment. The savings presented is about $40,000 a year for our district. So we, at the Finance Committee, talked about it a lot, and this reason it's on this agenda today was to kind of approve it going to the next stage, which would be for Drummond Woodsum to review the contract so that we could look at moving forward with this. One thing that's important to note is this does not mean solar panels are getting installed on our properties or on the high school. This is simply groups of people who buy enough power where companies who build power producing things like solar arrays have enough demand where they can get the licensing to construct it.
So is this, and maybe either Kim or Michelle can clarify this, is this something where Drummond Woodsum can review the contract absent some sort of action from us this evening, or do we need, I mean, clearly it seems that approval would be contingent upon their advice around that contract.
I think we were looking for approval from the board that you were interested in us moving forward with bringing this to Drummond Woodsum for their review. We didn't want to spend legal funds if there was no interest in.
So I entertain a motion to that effect.
I'll make a motion, Betsy.
Richard, do we have a second?
I would say that.
Second from Yuri. Discussion on this one? If not, all those in favor? Those opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. So we'll stay tuned on that one and hear what Drummond and Woodsum feels is most interesting about that contract. That brings us to the consent agenda, and I would entertain a motion for the list.
So moved.
Richard, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Unanimous. That brings us to new business, and our first item of new business, item 10.1, to report the completion of the probationary period for the following employee, Janet Morissette, Tripp Middle School Food Service Assistant, and that was March 26, 2021. Item 10.2 is approval of the 21-22 school calendar.
I move the approval of the 21-22 school year.
We have a second. Second from Megan? Thank you. Discussion on this one? And Kim, I know you made a couple changes versus this year's.
Yes, Betsy, so we have, just a reminder that area schools, we need to have an aligned calendar with area schools as well. So this school calendar looks a lot like it might have looked in the past. We're actually starting with our first in-service days on August 30th and 31st, which is a little later than what we have done in the past. And then what I wanted to draw your attention to was the end of the year in June. So this calendar tonight would build in 3 snow days, with any additional snow days being remote learning days. However, that is contingent on a waiver related to allowing storm pack meals to count as feeding all students. We have that waiver, we've had that waiver all year, and we have it through September 30th of this year. And we don't know what's going to happen after that, but if we should no longer have a waiver, then we could no longer count storm pack meals as feeding all students, and we would need to go back to traditional snow days that get added on to the end of the calendar.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. That brings us to a point in our agenda where the only items remaining are 10.5, which is a request for an executive session to discuss the AFSCME negotiations, unless there are any other items of business that we need to take up this evening. Any other items of business? If not, I would entertain a motion for 10.5, and that's a request for an executive session to discuss the AFSCME Council 93, Local 2010 AFL-CIO negotiations pursuant to 1 MRSA 40560.
So moved.
That was Richard. Do we have a second?
Second.
Yuri? All those in favor? Unanimous?